if I wanted to do these, according to the property, do they both have the same base? So all we do to the exponents is add them. Now, so my answer is going to be x to the fifth. Here's what's technically happening. Do you guys understand? This is technically x to the third is x times x times x, correct? X squared, isn't that x times x? Isn't that 5x's? So you can either think of it as 3x's and 2x's making 5x's, or you can just add the powers. It's easier just to add the powers. For this one, what we're going to do, the first step is multiply the negative 5 times the 6. That gives us negative 30. Then x to the third times x squared, well, we just did that, is x to the fifth because you add the powers. And y times y to the seventh, well, you add the powers. Do you understand y without a power is 1? So what's 1 plus 7? 8. Next, according to the property, when you take a power to a power, you multiply. So this should be x to the 6, because 2 times 3 is 6. But technically, here's what's happening. X squared to the third means x squared times x squared times x squared. Doesn't that mean 2 plus 2 plus 2? You can always fall back to writing it out the long way. It's just writing out the long way takes longer. But it's easier just to multiply the powers out. Let's look at this one. 3x to the 7th times x to the 5th squared. So let's first take x to the 5th and square it. We now have 3x to the 7th times x to the 5th squared. What do you do with those powers? You add or multiply them? You multiply them. Now, can the x to the 7th times the x to the 10th combine? Yeah, you add those powers. So 7 plus 10 is 17. For this one, when you divide, if the bases are the same, you subtract. So what's 5 minus 3? 2. But what's technically happening, x to the 5th means this. X to the 3rd means this. Now watch this. Can't you cancel? Isn't that x squared? It's always good to know where it comes from. Instead of just trusting me by saying subtract the powers, here's where it comes from. You write them out, you cancel them out, x squared. For this one, what's 6 divided by 9? That's 2/3. What's 6 minus 3? 3. And 8 minus 7? You could also write this as either one works. These two can jump up there with the 2. But we just subtracted the powers and we're good to go. This one, x squared over x to the 5th. What happens when you 2 minus 5? Isn't it negative 3? Which one would that mean? X to the 3rd on the bottom, according to this property. Watch this. If I write it the long way, isn't that x to the 3rd on the bottom? 1 over x to the 3rd. Isn't 2 minus 5 negative 3rd power? Don't negative powers drop to the bottom? What's this one going to be? Negative 2 power? Well, that's going to be 1 over 3 squared. What's 3 squared? That's 1 over 9. Now this one, this is 5 times x to the negative 4th times y. Now that negative 4th only goes to the x. So what happens here, the 5 and the y stay on top. And the x to the 4th drops to the bottom. Be careful with that one. Alright. Next, negative 2x to the third. The third power would go to the negative 2, and the third power would go to the x. Negative 2 to the third power would be negative 8. X to the third power is x to the third. The long way, that's the long way. Negative 2x, negative 2x, negative 2x. Negative 2, negative 2, negative 2 is negative 8. X is x to the third. Could you have also just distributed this to both pieces? Here, we're going to distribute this to both pieces. So x to the fifth to the negative fourth is going to be x to the negative 20th. X to the negative third to the negative fourth is going to be y to the positive 12th. Are we done? No, we're not allowed negative powers, so I'm going to drop that negative. This would be y to the 12th over x to the 20th. That's your final answer. You can't have negative powers. This one's pretty much the same as this one. This squared is going to distribute to both of them. But the shortcut, the long way, is going to be x to the fifth. This is the long way, sorry. X to the fifth squared, so x to the fifth, x to the fifth. X times x is x squared. 5 times 5 is 25. Could you also just put x squared? 5 squared is 25. This one, we distribute this to here and to here. So that's going to be x to the third to the negative fifth will be x to the negative 15th. And that would be y to the negative fifth. Now, are we allowed negative powers? No. So if we're not allowed negative powers, what's going to happen here is this is going to drop to the bottom. And won't this go to the top? They switch because negative powers are not allowed. So that's your answer. Last one. What's y squared over y squared? What's anything over itself? Real quick, what's, according to this property, don't you subtract the two powers? Isn't this, anything over itself is 1, right? Isn't this equal to x to the 0? Because isn't 2 minus 2 0? Do you guys see that? Anything over itself is 1. 2 minus 2 is 0, right? That's where it comes from. What's this one going to be? Does that 0 go to the 3? No. This simply is going to be 3 times 1, because x to the 0 is 1, so the answer is 3. This one is negative 5x all to the 0, so that means that both of these go to the 0 power. So if all these go to the 0 power, isn't that 1 times 1? Which is 1.